Drake May has arrived and given New England another franchise quarterback. We'll talk about it today.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Absolutely nothing but facts spoken. It is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On NFL. This is the barbershop, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 sports podcast network. And we want to shout out our everydayers for joining us each and every day on this show and helping us become that. All right, I'll give it to you like you came to get it. My man Kevin Oestreicher has joined me here on Tuesday, and it's Oestreicher. I call him Oestreicher. It's just easier sometimes for me to say that. But it's Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens. What we do is we navigate around the National Football League and use clips from the local experts from our network that kind of allows you to put your finger right on the pulse and hear the heartbeat of each and every ball club. Today's version of the show, wherever you watch or get your podcast, make sure you tap in so you don't miss an episode like the one you're watching or listening to. Is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Here's where me and Oestreicher are going today. We're going to talk about Drake May and his arrival. How bad is bad? Right in the middle of the show, at the end of the show, we'll talk about why the Pittsburgh Steelers seem to be stuck in mediocrity. But first, back to the top. Drake May. Oestreicher, I'm gonna hit you hot. You ready? I'm gonna hit you hot with it now.
Let's do it.
If I could pick any quarterback from around the league, it'd be Josh Allen first, Patrick Mahomes second. My third choice would be that kid in New England, Drake May. Drake May is a superstar, dog. And I know I'm skipping over your boy Lamar and the Florida boy I am, man. I hate to do it.
Man.
I just know how I like the game to be played, and it seems like Drake May can play it at an extremely high level.
You know, I think we've been waiting for a while, a couple of years to figure out who at least that number 5 guy is in the NFL. Because I think consensus-wise, it has been Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and Burrow in no particular order.
And then they were throwing Herbert in there.
Yeah, it was like Herbert or Hurts or Stafford, So they were cycling in and out who that 5th guy was. I mean, I think there's no question after the way that Drake May has played that he has cemented himself in that top 5. And again, you can order that however you want to, but I think that those are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He absolutely is a superstar. And again, I know the conversation point is, man, all these Patriots fans got a bajillion years of Tom Brady, and here they are about to get a bajillion years of Drake May. And come on, when can people are saying, when can our teams get some love? But there are franchise quarterbacks throughout this league, and obviously over in Baltimore, I'm definitely grateful to have one of them in Lamar Jackson. But it's really cool to see the evolution from Drake May, especially for a guy that there were questions about coming out of North Carolina about whether he could be the guy at the NFL level, whether he could translate over. And I mean, he's answered all those questions with flying colors. And, it's not like they've got a Justin Jefferson over there or a Jamar Chase over there. I mean, they have some talented players, but I think with the way that he's performed, it honestly reminds me a little bit of how Lamar played in 2019, his second season, his MVP year, burst onto the scene, questions about him. And I know there were different questions for different reasons, and there are always different questions about everybody, but watching Drake May evolve was really cool.
Yeah, for this year, I'll put the 3 people that I put in there, even though Mahomes can get away with not playing great, because he's won so much. Lamar is still one of my top 7. So is Joe Burrow. But I have to say, I'd round out my top 5 this year with Stafford and Dak. That's just the way I would go this year with the way that they played. But Drake May, man, he's like number 3 for me. And one of the reasons is because of his ability to just do everything he has to do in a very high level. Here's my man Nick Cattles talking about what he did last night in their game on Monday Night Football.
Last week was probably their most iffy game since the Pittsburgh Steelers game where they turned the ball over 5 times. The Patriots had not had their bye yet. They lost a couple of key players in the trenches. They could have been complacent. They couldn't have shown up. They could have just played a terrible and flat football game on Monday night, but they didn't. Mike Vrabel had them ready to play. They came out shot out of a cannon. They absolutely dominated the first half, and because of that, because of their professionalism and this coaching staff having their guys ready to play, the Patriots are now 11-2, the number 1 seed in the AFC. We'll have it all covered. Live postgame coming up pretty soon. Locked On Patriots. Can't wait to talk about it. Number 1.
Listen, man, one of the things I can say about watching that game is this. For everyone that saw Josh McDaniels get fired, and then when the Patriots hired him to be, every fan that went, he stinks. Did you just see what he did? I keep trying to tell people, just because you're not a great head coach doesn't mean you're not a great coordinator. That dude is a great coordinator. Everybody, he had to go. Well, you know what? He got another one. He got another kid that might be on his way, and he can really, really call offense. They're a real good football team, man.
Yeah, he might be the poster child for guys who just need to stay coordinators and not be head coaches. And that's a totally fine thing to do because, you find your calling like that, you're not a guy that can be a head coach. All right, then go be one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. And you can turn that into a pretty good career if you ask me. And now that you've had that experience working with a guy like he's worked with a bunch of quarterbacks over the course of, his coaching career, but the experience that he has had working with those guys, I think, has been very valuable to Drake May. And honestly, you'll have veterans on that team, but they're set up pretty well, in my opinion. They spent money this offseason in free agency, which I thought was really cool. But I mean, you have building blocks here with guys like Will Campbell and Travion Henderson and some of these other younger players, and they can continue to add to that. Because, you look across the league, and especially with the boom in the salary cap and all these huge quarterback contracts, Josh Allen just got it feels like $5 billion from the Bills, and Lamar's about to get paid by the Ravens again, and you're starting to see all these guys. If you're the Patriots, you have to maximize this window with Drake May on his rookie contract, and I'm really excited to see how they build this roster around him for the next couple of seasons, because this is what you have to maximize. These are the next couple of years before that contract starts to kick in, and they should go all in these next couple of years to try to get Drake May over the top, because not everybody can be a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes where you're winning Super Bowls at such a young age and you start that trend early. I mean, there's great quarterbacks in the league right now that haven't won or even been to a Super Bowl, and they're getting up there in age. But I think for New England, the fact that they have Drake May, they have a couple of young pieces, and their defense looks really good as well, by the way. I think that team's set up really nicely for the future.
Yeah. Who else is in the top 3 with Vrabel and Coach McDonald out in Seattle in the Coach of the Year? Is Dave Canales. Dave Canales, and I'll throw Liam Cohen in there too. Dave Canales, though, everybody thought they'd have anything. And now they're sitting there right on the precipice of making the playoffs in NFC. Here's my man, Julian Council.
I doubted him, but the Panthers get it done, pulling off yet another stunner in the NFL, upsetting the Los Angeles Rams this time. Hi, I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers, inside Bank of America Stadium after the Panthers had an upset 31-28 win against the Los Angeles Rams, now moving to 7-6 on the season, a half game behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and firmly in control of their playoff fates heading into the final 4 games of the year. Bryce Young, 3 touchdowns, spectacular, especially on 2 fourth-down throws to Jalen Coker and Tataroa McMillan. Derek Brown, maybe his finest moment as a Panther, a strip sack of Matthew Stafford that was the deciding factor in this game. The Panthers defense.
Give me about 30 seconds and tell me what you think of Carolina, man.
Man, I think Carolina's awesome. I think they're awesome. And my big thing with them is definitely the fact that, maybe I was a little too early on Carolina, but I was there. I was there on Carolina in terms of what they could have been. And, I think the Bryce Young redemption arc is really cool. And he's been up and down at points this season. But, they're a team in that NFC South where you're just like, all right, well, kind of Tampa Bay's division to lose here. We'll see what ends up happening. And Carolina's just kind of burst onto the scene. And I'll say that, some of these wins, especially this Rams one, impressive. They've had multiple impressive wins.
Dallas, Green Bay,
yeah, they've had good wins this year, and so they also were a team that I was kind of wondering about a little bit. What are they going to be able to do with some of the talent that they have? But I think they've responded again, like Julian talked about there, the receivers, McMillan, Coker, like they have dudes on that offense that might not be like household names like Rico Dowdle, for example, but those guys have gotten the job done. And so I'm excited to see if they can go on a little run here, make some noise in that NFC, because I think the NFL, and we'll talk about this over the course of the show, Wig, but it's such a weird year in the NFL. Like, I feel like everybody has a chance. I mean, we'll talk about the AFC, but in the NFC, I think you're looking at the Rams as that team right now, Seattle, another one, but I think anything can happen. And I think a team like Carolina, who has that sneaky underdog potential, who's beaten a couple of good teams here and shown it, I wouldn't count anybody out right now. Not Carolina, who I think has been really impressive.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about the NFC, because in the AFC, there are two teams I can count out, but one of them is worse than the other. How bad is bad? The Tennessee Titans. Tyler Rowland's going to tell you that they're absolutely atrocious here in just a second on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum, flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap and every drive and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. Here with Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens, talking about the National Football League. We're talking about winners and potential future GOAT quarterbacks and championships and New England being lucky. Now we got to go to the ugly side of life and talk about teams that haven't won, but one of them has won a little bit lately. That's the New York Jets. We'll get to them in a minute. But first, without further ado, I introduce you to somebody you already know here from Locked On NFL. That is the host of the morning show, Tyler Rowland. But here he's talking about his own team, the Tennessee Titans.
What a pathetic loss by the Tennessee Titans, and a friendly reminder of just how terrible this football team is. And look, myself included, we got a little high off the garbage fumes the last couple of weeks. The Titans make games that they never were going to win look a little bit closer. We all get excited and things like that. And there was improved play that we should be excited about in those weeks. But once again, the Titans are back to tell you they are the worst football team in franchise history. They are the worst football team in the NFL. And that coaching performance from Mike McCoy. Look, I defended him when he took the field goal at the beginning of the game, but punting continuously down multiple scores in the second half when you're a 1-9, 1-10 football team, absolutely ridiculous. You add in some of the individual notes from this game. Look, I know there's a lot of bad out there, but Cam Ward was bad in this game. Not only that, but J.C. Latham was an absolute disaster on the offensive line. Xavier Restrepo got hurt. Chim Dike fumbled a kick on defense. Kevin Winston struggled at times, even though he made some splash plays early, and then all the fighting. I mean, the Titans literally got bullied by the Jacksonville Jaguars punter. Like, as embarrassing, as despicable, as terrible of a loss as you could possibly have. Again, if last week was a perfect loss, this was as bad of a loss as you could have. What an embarrassing organization.
Normally I cut this stuff off, but I let that one play. I let that one ride for a little bit, just so he can get to the end where he says, we got punked and dunked on by the punter of the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's what we do around here. You don't play around with no Jaguars, Jack. I'm telling you right now, my grandmother might catch you outside and do something to you. But look, He's right, man. They're awful, dog. They're about as bad as any of those Cleveland teams. You remember the ones a few years back? Not the bad Cleveland team now, because at least they got a great defense.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that other one a few years back when it was like, this is never going to end. They're going to be the worst team forever. The Titans are in that territory. They're awful. They are awful.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Kevin said, yeah.
I mean, it's true. I know you were probably rubbing your hands together like, oh, this is gonna be good when Tyler put that.
Birdman, right?
Yeah. Man, I know you were enjoying that one, but no, it's terrible. I mean, they can't run the ball at all. It's horrible. You know that the receivers aren't doing anything. I mean, Tyler put it really well. I mean, you know, there's nothing he said that, you know, I wouldn't say about this team right now. And, you know, no one expected Tennessee to make the playoffs this year or be competitive this season. It was about kind of finding Cam Ward in the draft last year. You get the number 1 pick. That's who you take, and kind of just seeing what he has. But, you know, when you can't block for the guy effectively, when you can't play defense right, and, you know, you don't have the talent on the roster, it's hard to even evaluate certain things for next season, because you're like, well, hopefully they're going to have a better roster next season, and then you can really start to evaluate, all right, what about when Cam Ward gets a little more help? Or what about when he gets a little bit more protection? How can he perform in those moments? Obviously, you know, the head coach that comes in is going to be a big factor in that. So it is hard to judge that as well, about like who's going to be leading this group and who their offensive coordinator is going to be, for example. But I always say this, Wig, there are things that you can take away from a lost season. The best thing you can do during a lost season is try to take away as many positives as you can for next year. Hey, you know, we went whatever 1-16 or, you know, 3-13 or 14 or whatever, but you know, we really liked what we saw out of these 3 guys that can help us compete next season, or really liked what we saw out of this guy in this specific area. Let's see what we can improve, because we already know that's a strength. And I just hope that they can find a lot of different things here over the course of the next 5 weeks, because the on-field product, you also play for pride too, right? These guys are just going to give up and lie down and say, all right, give us that number 1 draft pick again. No, they're fighting for their careers. They're fighting for contracts and jobs and just winning football games, which they want to do out there. I mean, you know, for example, Kevin Zeitler, who was a huge vet, you know, he doesn't want to go out there and just lose games. I mean, he plays for pride every single week. So it's been a tough year for Tennessee. You know, the Brian Callahan thing didn't work, and you make that decision, and that essentially seals it for them. They're not going to be competitive. Not that they were anyway with Callahan, but it just feels like in a lost season, there haven't been many positives to take away, and that's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, and another team that we were talking bad about, but they have exactly what you just said. The reason why is because their coach isn't going to get fired, and then they're able to grasp some positives. Here's about a good minute with my man, John Butchko from Locked On Jets.
The Jets get their 3rd win of the season in a thriller over the Atlanta Falcons. It was a standout performance by Jets special teams from start to finish, right down to Nick Folk's 56-yard field goal as time expired. The biggest story of this game for the Jets, though, was the emergence of Adonai Mitchell. Mitchell was acquired as part of the Sauce Gardner trade at the deadline. He had 8 catches for 102 yards, including a 52-yard touchdown in the second half. He was Tyrod Taylor's go-to guy in this game. Mitchell has all the physical tools to be a quality starting receiver in this league, and his skill set is a perfect complement to Garrett Wilson's. The Jets would love to see him stack performances like this from now until the end of the season. There is a lot of opportunity to earn a starting role on this team going forward. This was a big first step and an encouraging first step for the young receiver Adonai Mitchell, who the Jets just recently acquired.
See, exactly what you talk about, right? Traded their 2 best players and found something. Now have all of that draft capital, and then they're seeing their 2 young offensive linemen, their 2 young wide receivers, their running back, and now they're special teams. And Aaron Glenn is now starting to have a little proof of concept, saying this is what we got coming up.
That's what we were talking about too, you know, like that's what we wanted to see from them. I remember us talking about it over the course of this season. And yeah, I mean, this is exactly what you want 100%. I mean, the Jets aren't going to make the playoffs this season. I mean, no one expects them to. They're not in that conversation, but this is exactly what you want. And again, they have a lot to figure out at their quarterback position. You know, that's something where Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor clearly is not going to cut it. I'm curious to see if they're going to take maybe a Sam Darnold route with somebody like Seattle did, or, try to find their guy in the draft again. I'm not sure, but once you get that position figured out there, I mean, you do have a lot of talent. Plus, you mentioned the draft capital that they have and some of those young players. Like, they still have work to do building that roster up, but you can just feel the shift in, like, at least the vibe in Tennessee versus the vibe in New York right now is vastly different, because I think one team can see the light. It's like the Giants, for example, right? I think one team can see the light at the end of the tunnel, like, a team like the Giants or the Jets, while the other team is kind of looking for answers of like, well, man, there's just like 10 billion things on our to-do list, where the Jets and the Giants have checked some things off about like, hey, we're set here or we're set there. Still a lot of work to do with the rosters, but we at least know we have X, Y, and Z. And it's different for every team. But I'm impressed. And I think, again, what's been a rough season for the Jets, and, Aaron Glenn certainly had to find his way over the course of this season. I think they're finally starting to gain their footing. And over these last 5 weeks, if they can keep it going, I think there's a lot of positive to be had.
No doubt about it. Trying to find the positives in Pittsburgh, but they keep stealing my joy.
There you go.
And we'll tell you exactly why in just a second on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Aura Frames. That's correct, man. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out. No setup headaches, just instant smiles. It's holiday. It's a great holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten, in a drawer. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter by using the promo code Locked On at checkout. That's Aura, AURA, frames.com, promo code Locked On. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames selling out fast. They're selling out fast, so order yours now to get in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, moving and grooving, the third and final segment here on Locked On NFL. We appreciate you making us your first listen and the #1 sports podcast network. I'm going to come up in your wheelhouse, all up in your neighborhood right now, Oestreicher. We're going to talk about Chris Carter's Pittsburgh Steelers. They are going backwards fast. They got a head start because Burrow was out and Lamar was hurt. It looked like they were going to run away with the division until reality set in, and now they might not even make the playoffs. Here's my man Chris Carter after their loss.
Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast, giving you your quick game reaction to the Steelers' embarrassing 26-7 loss to the Buffalo Bills here at Acrisure Stadium. It was 249 rushing yards allowed by the Steelers, the most in Acrisure Stadium / Heinz Field history, and it was embarrassing. The Steelers came out, had a plan. They were taking away the pass game, allowing the Bills to run here and there, but going to halftime with a 7-3 lead. But for the fourth time this year, they lose after having a lead going into the second half. Things kickstart. Aaron Rodgers runs into a sack, gives up a fumble that's returned for a touchdown. Mason Rudolph comes in, skips a pass to DK Metcalf, throws an interception into triple coverage, and then from there, the Bills ran away with the game. After the game, everyone talking about they need to take accountability, from TJ Watt to Mike Tomlin to Aaron Rodgers. Talk to all of them at the podium. We'll break down more of that on the Locked On Steelers podcast, but truly, this could be the fork in the road moment for this season. At 6-6, they're tied with the Ravens. They play them next, and this team's scrambling for answers. They might not have them. We'll talk more about that on Locked On Steelers.
Their last week was the fork of the road for a season. Next week might be a fork of the road for that franchise. Hearing people booing Tomlin and saying fire Tomlin. What do you think about the Steelers, man, and what they're going to do?
Man, I'll say this. It's embarrassing to be a part of the AFC North right now. It is just straight up embarrassing. Every division.
Look at you owning the whole division. You're owning all of that stuff.
Every division in the NFL right now, outside the AFC North, has 2 7-win teams. Except, the NFC East is the only one that also is not in that conversation. But at least in the NFC East, they have an 8-win team. At least the Eagles have 8 wins. There's not a single 7-win team in the AFC North right now. That is how bad it is. Chris mentioned it. Ravens and Steelers are tied at 6-6. Bengals have 4 wins, and the Browns are the Browns. We don't really have to talk about the Browns right now. But the Steelers, to me, once the defense went, the team went, in my opinion. This defense has not been good for them this season because that's been the calling card, right? It's like they haven't had great quarterback play over the last handful of seasons. They've been trying to find that guy from, hoping Mason Rudolph would be that guy to hoping Kenny Pickett would be that guy to trying the veteran route with a couple of different names and obviously big ones like Russell Wilson and now Aaron Rodgers. And so you're thinking like, okay, that defense has carried them for so many years now and they have all these names and look at what they've done when they haven't had great quarterback play. That defense has carried them into the postseason. And, Mike Tomlin with all these, 100 over 500 win seasons. And now the defense it's mediocre to poor this season, and they have names on that defense. But I really think that where this happened for Pittsburgh was in the offseason. We talked about this, you and I remember, where I liked them bringing in DK Metcalf and I liked them bringing in Jalen Ramsey. The problem was they traded talent out with those deals too. Right. They traded away George Pickens, who looks like one of the best receivers in the league in Dallas now, and Minka Fitzpatrick, who was a key part of what they did schematically defensively with his versatility. And so if they had kept those two players, and I get it with Pickens, with the off-field stuff that, Pittsburgh was going through with him, and they probably just felt like, all right, we don't want to deal with this anymore. But talent is talent, and I get it, and I understand why they made the move. But at this point, like, I agree that Ravens game, because I'll tell you right now, Wig, there is not going to be a second team from the AFC North to make the postseason this year. There is not a path for the Ravens to have a wild card berth because they've lost so many tiebreakers to so many teams that are also competing for wild card spots. Pittsburgh, I think, is the same thing, where there just is not a spot for a team right now when you have teams like the Jaguars and the Texans and the Chiefs and the Bills and the Chargers and all these teams competing for spots. There's not a spot for a team that might win 8 games this season or 9 games this season. So it's the division or nothing. And while Cincinnati has a shot to make a run, for Pittsburgh, it's all going to come down to the quarterback play, in my opinion, and how that defense can respond. But they just don't have a lot of playmakers out there right now that are actually making plays. And I think we all saw that against the Bills on Sunday, where I thought that game was going to finish like 7-6 or something. It was so bad early. It was so bad. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
So y'all got them this week?
Yep.
Where's the game? Baltimore? Oh, it's in Baltimore.
They end week 18 is going to be Ravens Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I just know that game's about to be flexed to 820. It's going to determine the division like it did last year with Detroit and Minnesota. So the Ravens still have 3 division games left, and the Ravens currently are above Pittsburgh technically in the standings because of common opponent record, 5-3 versus 4-4. So it's literally it's that close right now. And
watch out for the Bengals. Watch out for the Bengals trying to go 9-8.
Right now in the AFC North, the Ravens have the 6th hardest remaining schedule. Pittsburgh's at 23 and Cincinnati is at 27. So there are opportunities for those two teams to win. I mean, all 3 of them to win games, obviously, but yeah, one of those teams is going to limp into the playoffs at like 9-8 or 10-7, and host a home playoff game, which I know is controversial in terms of seeding and whether teams like that should host playoff games or not.
Nobody wants it to be the Bengals. I'm going to tell you right now, nobody wants to see Joe Burrow in Cincinnati because they are different when he is in there. It's always the same here, though, on Locked On NFL, whether it's with Tyler Rowland early in the morning, the madman will wake you up and slap you right upside your head with that loud voice of his, like a double shot of espresso. You heard him here earlier, right? And then it's always me in the afternoon. It's twice a day, right here in the barbershop, where we get all up in everybody's business like we always do. Kevin Oestreicher is going to get out of here and go conquer the world in Baltimore. And I'm going to invite y'all to make sure you tap in tomorrow and tune in to Locked On NFL, just like I always do. We don't take it for granted. A little bit over 29 minutes today. We'll see you next time.